If you're enjoying stories of justice served with a side of corporate power, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more captivating narratives that will leave you both satisfied and entertained. Now, let's dive into today's compelling story. The autumn sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Teresa Morrison's corner office, casting long shadows across her mahogany desk. At 52, Teresa had built Morrison Hospitality from a single struggling hotel into a powerhouse chain spanning the southwestern United States. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and her steel-gray eyes focused intently on the quarterly reports before her. A soft knock interrupted her concentration. "Mrs. Morrison, line 2 is for you. It's Christopher from Sunset Ridge Estate, asking about the Morrison-Parker wedding." Teresa's brow furrowed. Her brother-in-law Frank's wedding to Sarah Parker was still 3 weeks away. She picked up the phone, her manicured fingers tapping lightly on the desk. "Christopher, good morning. What seems to be the issue?" "Mrs. Morrison, I just wanted to confirm the final arrangements for the Morrison-Parker wedding. Mr. Parker called this morning, quite upset about some confusion with the guest list." Teresa's spine straightened. "What confusion?" "Well, he mentioned that you wouldn't be attending after all, and asked if that would affect the venue donation since you're the owner. I assumed you knew." Teresa's expression remained impassive, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the phone. "I see. No, that won't affect anything. Thank you for bringing this to my attention." She hung up and immediately dialed another number. "James, this is Teresa Morrison. I understand there's been some question about the catering for the Morrison-Parker wedding. Yes, I'm calling about my donation. Has someone contacted you about changes to my attendance?" 3 more calls revealed the same pattern. Someone, her husband Scott, she quickly deduced, had informed every vendor that she would not be attending the wedding, but that her generous, anonymous donation of $40,000 would remain intact. Teresa stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the Phoenix skyline she knew so well. 27 years of marriage, and Scott had never done anything like this before. The betrayal stung, but more than that, it confused her. What could possibly have prompted this? Her office phone rang again. It was her assistant. "Mrs. Morrison, your husband is on line 1. Teresa took a deep breath, schooling her features into the same calm mask she wore during difficult negotiations. "Put him through." "Teresa," Scott's voice sounded strained, "we need to talk about Frank's wedding." "Yes," she replied, her voice unnervingly even. "We certainly do." The evening air was cool as Teresa pulled her Audi into the circular driveway of her Scottsdale home. The sprawling Spanish colonial mansion, a testament to her success, seemed suddenly foreign, as if she were seeing it through a stranger's eyes. Scott was waiting in the living room, pacing nervously. At 55, he still cut an impressive figure, his once dark hair now distinguished with gray at the temples. When Teresa entered, he stopped abruptly, his face a mixture of guilt and defiance. "You've been making calls," he said accusingly. Teresa set her purse down deliberately on the marble-topped side table. "Should I not have been informed that I've been disinvited from a wedding I'm paying for?" Scott ran a hand through his hair. "It's complicated, Teresa. Then uncomplicate it for me." Her voice was soft but commanding. "Frank and Sarah thought it would be better if you didn't attend. There's been so much tension between you and the rest of the family lately, and they want a drama-free wedding." Teresa's eyebrow arched. "Drama-free? Is that what they're calling it now? And yet my money is still welcome?" "It's not about the money. It's exactly about the money, Scott. They want the benefit of my resources without my presence. What I can't understand is why my own husband would go behind my back to arrange this." Scott's shoulders slumped. "Frank is my brother, Teresa. His fiancé's parents can't contribute much, and when you offered anonymously, it seemed like the perfect solution." "Perfect for whom?" Teresa asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Did it occur to you that I might have feelings about being excluded from an event I'm financing? I knew you'd be upset, but..." Upset doesn't begin to cover it. You betrayed my trust, Scott. You made me look like a fool to my own staff. Christopher, James, Michael, they all knew before I did. Scott paled. Your staff. What do they have to do with this? Teresa's smile was cold. Did you forget who owns Sunset Ridge Estate? Or that Copper Canyon Catering is a Morrison Hospitality subsidiary? Or that most of the out-of-town guests have reservations at my Desert Palm Resort? Teresa. Scott's voice held a note of warning. I think I need to speak with Frank and Sarah directly, Teresa said, already pulling out her phone. This evening. That's not a good idea. It wasn't a suggestion, Scott. Either we meet tonight, or I make some calls in the morning that will significantly alter their wedding plans. Scott stared at her for a long moment before nodding reluctantly. I'll arrange it. Frank and Sarah arrived 2 hours later, their faces tight with apprehension. Frank, younger than Scott by 4 years, had the same Morrison jawline but none of his brother's diplomacy. Sarah, a petite woman with anxious eyes, clutched her fiancé's hand as if it were a lifeline. They sat awkwardly in Teresa's meticulously designed living room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Thank you for coming, Teresa began, her voice professionally cordial. I believe we have some matters to discuss regarding your upcoming wedding. Frank shifted uncomfortably. Look, Teresa, I know Scott probably told you that I've been uninvited from an event I'm funding to the tune of $40,000. Yes, he mentioned it. Teresa's smile didn't reach her eyes. Sarah spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. It wasn't personal, Teresa. We just thought, with everything that happened at Thanksgiving last year, and then the Christmas incident. You mean when your mother repeatedly insinuated that I married Scott for his money, despite the fact that I'm the one who built this fortune? Teresa interrupted smoothly. Or when your father made those charming comments about career women being terrible mothers? Frank's face reddened. That's exactly what we're talking about. Everything becomes a conflict with you. Teresa leaned forward. Let me be clear. I donated that money because, despite our differences, Scott is my husband, and you are his family. I wanted your wedding to be beautiful, but I did not sign up to be insulted and excluded while still footing the bill. No one is trying to insult you, Scott interjected, but you have to admit, Teresa, you can be intimidating. Teresa turned to look at her husband, genuine hurt flashing across her face before her professional mask returned. Intimidating, I see. And this intimidation justifies lying to me for weeks. We didn't lie, Frank protested. We just didn't tell you everything. A lie of omission is still a lie, Teresa replied coldly. She stood, smoothing her skirt. I think I need to reconsider my involvement in this wedding. Sarah's eyes widened in panic. You're taking back the money? The wedding is in 3 weeks. Everything's paid for. Actually, Teresa said, nothing is paid for yet. The venue, the catering, the hotel accommodations, all of those are my companies, operating under my explicit instructions. Frank jumped to his feet. You can't do this. That's extortion. It's business, Teresa corrected him. You wanted my business resources without my presence. I'm simply clarifying that the two are inseparable. What do you want, Teresa? Scott asked quietly. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. Respect, honesty, the basic courtesies one might expect from family. She paused, but since those seem to be in short supply, I'll settle for the following terms. The following morning, Teresa sat at her desk reviewing contracts when her phone buzzed. It was her lawyer. Mrs. Morrison, I've drawn up the agreement as you requested. Are you sure you want to proceed with these terms? They're quite stringent. Teresa's lips curved into a small smile. I'm certain, Richard. Has the Morrison-Parker party received the document? Yes, about an hour ago. I've already received 3 calls from Scott. I imagine you have. Please direct all inquiries back to me. I'll handle this personally. Teresa hung up and leaned back in her chair, waiting. Within minutes, her office door burst open, and Scott stormed in, waving a stack of papers. $75,000, he demanded. Written apologies, a public acknowledgement. Have you lost your mind? Teresa remained seated, her composure perfect. Not at all. I've simply set a price on my dignity. This is blackmail, Teresa. This is consequence, Scott. Actions have them. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Sit down. Let's discuss this like adults. Scott reluctantly lowered himself into the chair. Frank doesn't have this kind of money. Frank has a successful dental practice. Sarah's family owns considerable real estate. And you, Scott, have access to our joint accounts. Between the three parties who orchestrated this deception, I'm certain you can manage the funds. And the apologies. The public acknowledgement. Teresa's eyes hardened. Non-negotiable. You all decided to humiliate me privately. The remedy must include public restoration. Scott ran a hand over his face. Why are you doing this? Is it really about the wedding, or is it something else? For the first time, Teresa's composure faltered slightly. 27 years, Scott. 27 years I've endured your family's subtle digs and not-so-subtle criticism. I've hosted them in our home, included them in our holidays, supported their endeavors financially and emotionally. And this is how I'm repaid, with conspiracy and exclusion. It wasn't a conspiracy. What would you call it then? A group of people making decisions about me behind my back, accepting my generosity while planning my humiliation? Scott was silent. You have 48 hours to meet my terms, Teresa continued, her professional demeanor returning. After that, I make the calls that cancel everything. And if we refuse? Teresa's smile was thin. Then Frank and Sarah can explain to 200 guests why they suddenly have no venue, no catering, and no hotel rooms in Phoenix during peak season. Scott stood, his expression a mixture of anger and something else, perhaps a grudging respect. I never thought you could be this cold. I never thought you could be this disloyal, she countered. I suppose we're both discovering new things about each other. As Scott left, Teresa turned back to her computer, opening a new document titled Post-Morrison Enterprises. She had other plans to consider now. Exactly 46 hours later, Teresa's private line rang. It was Frank. We accept your terms, he said without preamble, his voice tight with suppressed anger. All of them? Teresa asked calmly. Yes. The money has been wired to the account your lawyer specified. You'll have the written apologies by end of day. And, he paused, swallowing audibly, we'll make the public acknowledgement at the reception. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate your cooperation. Don't act like this is some business deal, Teresa. You're tearing this family apart. Teresa's voice cooled several degrees. I didn't start this, Frank. I'm merely finishing it. The wedding will proceed as planned. I'll see you there. She hung up and buzzed her assistant. Janet, please call Christopher at Sunset Ridge. Tell him the Morrison-Parker wedding is back on schedule with no changes to the original plan. As Teresa made the necessary calls to reinstate all arrangements, she felt no triumph, only a hollow vindication. This wasn't how she had wanted things to unfold, but she refused to be disrespected in her own business domain. That evening, she returned home to find Scott packing a suitcase. Going somewhere? She asked from the doorway. He didn't look up. I think I should stay at the guest house for a while, give us both some space. Teresa nodded, unsurprised. That's probably wise. Scott finally turned to face her. Was it worth it, Teresa? Winning this battle? This wasn't about winning, Scott. It was about standing up for myself when no one else would, least of all my husband. I was caught in the middle. No, Teresa said quietly. You chose a side. It just wasn't mine. Scott zipped his suitcase and lifted it from the bed. As he passed her in the doorway, he paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Teresa met his gaze steadily. So am I. After he left, Teresa sat on the edge of the bed they had shared for nearly 3 decades. For the first time since this ordeal began, she allowed herself a moment of grief. not just for the wedding drama, but for the marriage that had somehow crumbled beneath it. Tomorrow, she would be strong again. Tonight, she would mourn what was lost. The day of Frank and Sarah's wedding dawned clear and perfect, as October days in Phoenix often are. Teresa dressed with particular care, selecting a champagne-colored sheath dress that was elegant without being showy. Her makeup was flawless, her jewelry understated but expensive. As she entered Sunset Ridge Estate, her estate, every head turned, conversations faltered. Even the wedding coordinator, a seasoned professional who had worked dozens of events for Morrison Hospitality, seemed nervous. Teresa smiled pleasantly at everyone, accepting congratulations on the beautiful venue, graciously deflecting compliments. To the casual observer, she was merely a poised, successful woman attending a family wedding. Only those who knew the full story recognized the steel beneath her silk exterior. The ceremony was lovely, if somewhat tense. Teresa sat alone in the front row on the groom's side, the empty space beside her a silent testament to the upheaval in her personal life. Scott stood beside his brother at the altar, steadfastly avoiding her gaze. At the reception, Teresa mingled professionally, speaking with guests as if she were hosting one of her many corporate events. She maintained a careful distance from Scott's immediate family, who watched her warily from across the room. Finally, the moment came. Frank tapped his glass for attention, and the room quieted. "Sarah and I want to thank everyone for coming today," he began, his voice slightly strained. "This beautiful celebration wouldn't have been possible without the generosity of my sister-in-law, Teresa Morrison." Teresa watched as he struggled with the words they had agreed upon. Teresa not only provided this stunning venue through her company, but also arranged the catering and accommodations for our out-of-town guests. More than that, Frank hesitated, then continued with visible effort. "She showed us what true grace looks like, even when faced with our misguided decisions. We publicly acknowledge her contributions and apologize for any hurt we caused." A murmur ran through the crowd. Most guests looked confused, but a few, those closer to the family, exchanged knowing glances. Sarah stepped forward, taking her new husband's hand. "We want to thank Teresa for teaching us an important lesson about respect and appreciation. This wedding, quite literally, wouldn't have happened without her." Teresa raised her champagne glass in acknowledgement, her expression serene. The message had been delivered. The terms had been met. Later, as the evening wound down, Scott approached her for the first time that day. "You got what you wanted," he said quietly. Teresa shook her head. "What I wanted was a family that valued me as much as I valued them. What I got was confirmation that I need to make some changes." "What kind of changes?" "I've been thinking about restructuring Morrison Hospitality, breaking it into regional divisions, perhaps. I might relocate to our California properties for a while." Scott's expression fell. "And us?" Teresa met his gaze directly. "I think we both know that us has been an illusion for some time now. You sided with your family over your wife. That's not something I can simply forget." "So that's it? 27 years and you're walking away?" "No, Scott, I'm moving forward. There's a difference." As she turned to leave, she heard whispers following her. By morning, the story would be circulating throughout Phoenix's business community, how Teresa Morrison had turned a family betrayal into a lesson about respect and power. How she had demonstrated that quiet strength becomes absolute power when underestimated by those who should treasure such generosity. In the coming months, Teresa would finalize her divorce, restructure her company, and find unexpected fulfillment in her independence. The wedding incident would become something of a legend in hospitality circles, a cautionary tale about the dangers of crossing Teresa Morrison. But tonight, as she drove home alone through the desert darkness, Teresa felt neither victorious nor defeated. She felt, perhaps for the first time in decades, authentically herself, a woman who knew her worth and refused to accept anything less than what she deserved. And that, she reflected as the lights of Phoenix receded in her rearview mirror was worth far more than $75,000 or public apologies. It was, quite simply, priceless. If this story of standing up for yourself resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more compelling narratives of justice, redemption, and personal power. Hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, respect isn't just earned. Sometimes it must be demanded.